Welcome back, everyone. It's nice to have you back in our version of the big house here, the NCRC dining room. So it's great to connect once again for our 2023 IHPI Member Forum. Today we're focusing on cultivating connections, collaboration, and community, the four C's. And it's great to be back. This is the first time we're having a full-scale member forum since 2020, right before the pandemic. Last year, we reconvened for a smaller version in the research auditorium. So it's great to have you with us and look forward to spending the next couple hours bringing you up to date and really tapping your ideas for what can make IHPI as strong and as engaging as possible. So this is just an overview of our agenda for today's session. I'll start out with my annual year in review, what's IHPI been up to, helping us sort of come back together and understand how active our community's been. And then we will be having an exercise at your tables for a chance for you all to speak to each other and provide us with input and guidance on how we can be looking ahead at the future of IHPI. And then we'll have a presentation by colleagues from CHOP, the Center for Health Outcomes and Policy, who've done some interesting redesign of their space. And as we all think about what work is like in this hybrid world that we're living in and what can make our shared space as attractive and as engaging as possible, our CHOP colleagues will walk us through their thinking and how they've redesigned their space. And then we'll wrap up around 4 with the presentation of our annual Policy Impact Awards, which is always a very fun part of this event. And then we hope as many of you as possible can stay right after that. We'll have a networking reception with refreshments and hors d'oeuvres and an opportunity to connect with each other, with our IHPI staff who are here today, and to continue to build our connections. So where are we in terms of the year in review? First, I want to thank Ken Langa, who's an outgoing member of our IHPI leadership team. He wrapped up his term in December after finishing 2 3-year terms on the leadership team. And at that time, we also welcomed Raviano Pindi from the Ross School, Donnie Lukoski from Cardiac Surgery, and Samir Saini from Internal Medicine and the VA Center for Clinical Management Research as new members of our leadership team. So this shows the current roster of members of our leadership team at IHPI, also known as the ILT. And these are the faculty, the experienced faculty in our membership who advised Trish Meyer, our managing director, and me on strategic priorities and resource investments that we can make as an institute to be as effective as possible. It's been another very productive year for all of you. We're now up to 676 faculty members of IHPI, including over 650 faculty and 22 clinician scholars. And in the last academic year, ending last June, we welcomed 42 new members of IHPI. And so our members come from 15 schools and colleges across the Ann Arbor campus, as well as the Dearborn and Flint campuses. And you, in the research you do, continue to lead over 10% of the university's full extramural research funding and the work that goes on in research here at the University of Michigan. So a very important part of the university's overall research mission. And over 200 new grants were awarded to IHPI members as principal investigators in the last year. So today is an opportunity to reconnect our community. Over the past year, we've been focusing on bringing more of us together through in-person and hybrid events and reestablishing some of those connections that may have been a little bit hard to maintain and sustain in the fully virtual world that we were in for the first couple of years of the pandemic. So one example is our tailgate reception, which we hosted once again in person last fall before one of the university's home football games. This year it was at the golf clubhouse right across the street from the stadium. And that was a great opportunity for members and family and staff to come together to celebrate the start of the new academic year. And we do want to flag and encourage you to save the date for the next tailgate reception, which will be September 23rd, before the University of Michigan game versus Rutgers. So watch for more details of that annual event. Another way that we've been trying to reconnect and help members reconnect is through informal coffee and donut gatherings in different locations at IHPI, open to the whole community. And this has been a way for people to have conversations, to make new connections, as well as reconnect with colleagues. Last month, we hosted the IHPI's annual Directors Lecture with our guest speaker, Professor Mike Chernew, Chair of the Medicare Payment Advisory Commission, who presented on the future of Medicare and healthcare reform in a fireside chat model over at the Ross School. And so that conversation has been recorded. It's available through the IHPI newsletter and website for those of you who may have missed that discussion, a lively one. So today we'd like to highlight some of the ways that you can engage with IHPI. This is a sampling. We won't cover everything that's offered through IHPI in this presentation, but these are some of the highlights and some of the areas of new developments that we wanted to bring to your attention. One is an update on our Early Career Faculty Advisory Council, which remains a very important part of the strategic direction of IHPI. This year it's been led by Sue Ann Bell from the School of Nursing, and Mike Thompson, starting this summer, will be coming on board. He's the chair-elect and will serve as the new chair. And this is a group we turn to on a regular basis for new ideas about what IHPI can do to help support the career development and advancement of our early career faculty. So one example that we launched 5 years ago is our Emerging Scholars Exchange Program. This year, we were able to reinstitute it fully in person. Lauren Gerlach represented IHPI at the University of California, San Francisco, and Sarah Reeves at the University of Pennsylvania. They've both completed their visits. And we'll be hosting two colleagues from those two universities, Chen Kenyon from University of Pennsylvania and Sharad Wadhwani at University of California, San Francisco. Those are coming up. The first will be actually this Thursday, Chen Kenyon presenting here at IHPI, and Sharad Wadhwani is presenting on May 1st. So we hope you can attend in person. These are a great opportunity to get to know colleagues from these other two peer institutions, as well as for our faculty members to present their work at those sites. Another outgrowth of our Early Career Faculty Advisory Council was the new Sandy Hassmiller Awards. These are funds for new projects that can lead to larger funded grants. And our first two recipients of this award that's supported by philanthropy from Lou Sandy, a member of our National Advisory Board, and Sue Hassmiller, his spouse, and former vice president of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, national leader in nursing. Those two awards went to Debbie Chen from internal medicine and Olivia Colleen from ophthalmology. We'll be opening up the next round of call for proposals in mid-May. So if you are an early career faculty member with innovative ideas for new projects that you'd like to pursue, we encourage you to watch for that announcement. Another idea that came out of our Early Career Faculty Advisory Council were writing accountability groups. And so these are groups that faculty members have come together to share tips and guidance on writing tasks that they have. We hosted 3 to 4 of these groups over groups of 3 to 4 faculty meeting for 6 months at a time. And if you're interested in forming a new one of these groups, Jody Moore is the staff lead for this effort, and you can reach out to her. We also have upcoming in June our IHPI Community Volunteer Day. That's sponsored by the Early Career Faculty Advisory Council, and it's an opportunity for IHPI staff, faculty, and their families to come together on a service project. This year we'll be working with the Ann Arbor Parks and Recreation to get one of their parks ready for the summer season. Another area where we, I think, really can make a big difference in our members' work and their impact is through our policy engagement and external relations team. So this team helps our members inform local, state, and federal policy by disseminating findings that may come from your research, connecting you to policymakers and other stakeholders, nominating members for national advisory committees through IHPI, and then helping you to develop better communication tools, targeted one-pagers and issue briefs that can be shared with policymakers and other key leaders. One of the things we're most excited about this year is the launch of our Impact Accelerator program, which will be an intensive 3-day workshop that we're hosting in mid-May. The call for applications went out earlier this year, and we have a cohort of 13 faculty who will be participating with our staff in intensive training around working with policymakers, with the media, with social media, and understanding how to get their message out most effectively. So this is the cohort of 13 faculty at all levels who are participating in this first cohort. We expect we'll learn from this experience in May and be offering this program again in the future. So if you're interested, watch for that in the coming year. At the end of that 3-day program, we'll host one of our monthly IHPI research seminars moderated by Renu Tepernini. And the colleagues shown here who are all experienced in engaging with policymakers will be talking about the work that they've done and how best to advance the work that we do here at IHPI and connect it to the broader audience of policy and practice leaders who can make a difference with the evidence that we're producing. So that'll be on May 18th at 2 o'clock here in the research auditorium at IHPI. Another important part of IHPI's policy engagement is our Policy Sprints program, which we've been offering for the past 6 years. This is an opportunity for teams to come together on relatively rapid, timely, important topics that can be addressed in a 3 to 6 month time frame with new analyses or pulling together existing evidence. And so the current call for proposals is a partnership with the Rogel Cancer Center. We're excited about that new connection. And it's for projects to be co-led by members of IHPI and the Cancer Center around policy topics along the cancer continuum. And so that call for proposals is currently open, and the deadline is May 22nd. So what about our strategic initiatives, which are also an important part of engagement with IHPI members? So one that we launched, ironically, right before the pandemic began in late 2019 or early 2020, was our telehealth initiative that was initially led for the past several years by Chad Elamoodle, and was then, the baton was passed to Lori Buis at the beginning of this year as the new faculty lead for that program. So we're looking to grow our network of faculty working in telehealth in its many forms. So virtual visits, e-health, digital health, mobile health, and other health IT applications are ways that members can engage with this network and watch for upcoming opportunities such as talks and networking events that we'll be launching in the coming months. Emma Steppe is the staff lead for this effort. Our national poll on healthy aging remains a very vital part of IHPI's work. It's been led since its inception by Preeti Milani, who has now moved on into an advisor role as she's taken on a new role for JAMA and the JAMA network. And Jeff Kulgren, beginning this year, is serving as our director for the poll, with Erica Solway as deputy director and Scott Roberts as the associate director. And one of the ways that IHPI has become a broader resource for members here, as well as colleagues around the world, is the 7 waves of poll data that we now make available for public use through ICPSR at the Institute for Social Research. And in the coming months, we'll be hosting a webinar on advising new users of data from the National Poll on Healthy Aging, how they can tap into those data for topics of interest to them. And this is an area where we value our partnerships with AARP and the Michigan Medicine Department of Communications, and we're now very excited about a new partnership that we have with the Michigan Health Endowment that's going to be taking what we learned from the National Poll on Healthy Aging and developing a Michigan-focused poll on healthy aging with an oversample of residents between ages 50 and 80 within our state. The Michigan Program on Value Enhancement, or M.P.P, is another important program under the leadership of Leslie Dossett and Jeff Barnes. And one of the new aspects of M.P.P is our faculty fellowship program, which is launching this week with a call for applications and be open through mid-May. This is an opportunity for faculty who have ideas that they'd like to pursue around promoting value and appropriateness of care in our own health system, as well as de-implementation of low-value care, will have the opportunity for funding support and mentoring from faculty and staff within our M.P.P program to develop those projects over the coming year. So watch for the announcement of that, and we look forward to engaging a wider range of faculty in this program. Another important strategic initiative is our Workforce Diversity and Health Equity Initiative, which has been in place and evolving over the past 3 years. This slide shows the faculty co-leads of our 3 working groups focused on recruiting and retaining diverse leaders, career advancement and leadership development, and inequities in care delivery, particularly within our own healthcare system of Michigan Medicine. And so these 3 working groups are wrapping up the phase of work that they've been working on over the past couple of years, preparing reports with recommendations and next steps to move forward. And over the next year, we'll be looking to align the work of and the recommendations of these working groups with the DEI 2.0 that the university is currently developing as the next 5-year plan around diversity, equity, and inclusion for the University of Michigan. We're also very pleased to support research interest groups, 2 of which are shown here, currently active. Our Oral Health Interest Group led by Ramesh Nalia, and our Community Engaged Health Policy Research Interest Group led by Susan Gould. And so these are opportunities for members to come together with some staff support to discuss shared ideas, opportunities for new research. Erica Solway is the staff lead for the Oral Health Group, and Jason Wolf for the Community Engaged Policy Research Group. So if you're interested in either of those topics or would like to propose a new interest group, please let us know either at this event today or after today's meeting. And then education and career development is another important part of our work. And this is really an area where we rely on you as the members to help us support the programs that we offer to faculty, to learners, and to staff. We want to recognize the 44 faculty members within IHPI who supported these programs in the last academic year. On the right is a list of 10 faculty members who volunteered more than once on different programs. And on the right is the other 34 members who volunteered at least once. And it's really, with gratitude that we thank the members here and encourage more to be involved as you see these opportunities to participate in things like our K-writing workshops, our summer lunch and learn sessions for students, some of the activities shown on this slide. So this summer, for the first time in 3 years, we'll be reinstituting our in-person version of summer lunch and learn sessions. For the past couple of years, we did this totally virtually with our students, and we invite students who are doing summer research projects with an IHPI faculty member to participate in these weekly sessions where they meet with other faculty to hear about career opportunities, how faculty members' careers developed, and also to learn skills that can be helpful to them. For example, how to write a manuscript or prepare an abstract or poster on the work that they're doing. So Stephanie Jarrett is the staff lead for this effort, as well as our K-writing workshop, which is open to early career faculty in partnership with MISHAR. And this year with MISHAR, we'll be offering a summer session for the K-writing workshop. Typically that's offered during the winter, and with a growing number of faculty applying for K awards and the cycles throughout the year, we wanted to make that more available in partnership with MISHAR. And then applications are currently open for our R01 boot camp that will launch next fall, and that will be open through May 15th for faculty who are applying for their first R01. And then watch also in the coming year, this slide shows a number of the skill building sessions that our staff have led in the past, and we'll be relaunching these sessions in the coming months, opportunities for faculty to work on the skills shown here and develop more experience with some of the tools that we offer, such as training in Twitter or visual abstracts or working with Medicare data. And just in closing, I want to comment on some of our increasing focus on philanthropy to help the Institute and many of you advance your work. Vince Cavatayo has been a key partner from the Michigan Medicine Development Team over the past several years. He has recently moved into a new leadership role as Director of Development for the Frankel Cardiovascular Center, and we've welcomed Nancy Short as a new member of the development team working with IHPI, and we continue to enjoy working with Laura Baudet and Joe Pifferetti. So we've had some success in the past year with important gifts, in this case from two of our National Advisory Board members. Gary and Wendy Kaplan have given us a generous donation to support our Clinician Scholars Program, and Mike and Trina Johns have done similarly to support future strategic priorities of IHPI. And we're developing a philanthropy council, sort of modeled on our National Advisory Board, but with a focus on philanthropy for the Institute. And that group will be meeting for the first time this fall. And we'll be looking to them and many of you to help us prepare for the university's upcoming capital campaign that we expect to launch in the next 1 to 2 years. And then we recently held a workshop, a training workshop with the development team to help members learn how to develop their ideas that could be attractive for donors and then how to communicate them effectively. And that's something we look forward to doing again in the future. So at this point, I'd like to open it up. That's sort of a whirlwind tour of some of the highlights of the past year and see if any of you have questions or comments. We have a couple of IHPI staff members with roving microphones available to take your questions and comments. So please. And just raise your hand and we'll find you with a microphone. There, okay, Chad. And Jeremy's coming with the microphone.
Hi, John. Thanks. First of all, congratulations. It's a lot to present. It's incredible what you've done.
Thank you.
I was meeting with Kathy Collins this morning talking about MSTP students. With such a large portion of the institution's funding happening, how much effort has there been in engaging MSTP students in future careers as health services researchers? Because clearly, it's a vibrant place to be. I think a lot of students, however, coming in, don't think about it. And I've started to peel back the layers and understand a little bit more about how students even find or apply to the program. And it's fairly self-driven.
Yeah, and do you want to just tell, for those who aren't from the medical school, MSTP stands for?
MD, Ph.D.
Yeah, the
when
medical
I went to
scientist.
Hopkins to get my ID, when they gave me my ID at Hopkins, they said just MD. I said, yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the MSTP Medical Scientist Training Program is to train MD, PhD students. It's well funded by NIH. And I think also the broader question about PhD students in general, what are their opportunities to engage with IHPI? We've had a small number of MD, PhD students, which predominantly includes basic science research, but a handful of them are interested in health services or policy-related disciplines, and we've created opportunities for that small number to work with IHPI faculty. I think a broader point from what you've raised is that we could do a better job sort of communicating about IHPI and our community as a resource for students applying to programs like this one around the country to build the pool of people looking to come to Michigan. We'll still be competing with our basic science colleagues for a limited number of slots. So it really hinges on attracting some of the best applicants with an interest in health policy. And I think the same could be said about the other PhD programs that are offered, such as the School of Public Health, the HSOP program. We've had a number of those students working with IHPI faculty, either on their own dissertations or on faculty research projects where the students can play a role. And I'd welcome if any of our colleagues here today have worked with either MD, PhD or PhD students, if you have any advice now or after this session. But I think we rely on our faculty in many ways to help get the word out, because oftentimes the faculty who are selecting the students into their PhD programs, and we're in regular communication with them. And I think we could do a better job of introducing, once students are here, introducing our faculty to them, and so they see the full range of research opportunities, especially as they're starting to form their dissertation committees. So, other questions or comments? Any other thoughts on this topic of engaging PhD students in the Institute? Sure, yeah.
Thanks. I do think that there is an opportunity to engage more PhD and doctoral students in IHPI. I get questions from my students. Like one wanted to come today and she's like, I'm not a member. So.
Okay. Good point. Well, I think this is something, Trish, that we can take to our education and training advisory group, which is led by Sarah Hawley, and think about ways that we can connect with PhD students, because some of them go on to become our faculty colleagues or ambassadors for the Institute or University of Michigan when they go elsewhere after completing their degrees. Yes. See. And just here's a mic coming, Justine.
Hi, I'm Justine Wu in Family Medicine. Just to piggyback on that, a lot of the doctoral candidates need good dissertation committee faculty members on their committee. And I know many of us have served on some, but we don't have formal outreach. And that might be a way to forge that connection more formally.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, and just by chance tomorrow, I'm meeting with the Dean of the Graduate School, Mike Solomon. This is sort of a topic that I could also raise with him and, get further guidance about sort of, the process in different programs for forming those committees and how we could make IHPI members more visible to students. Other questions? Karandeep. Jeremy's getting his steps in.
Thank you. Yeah, I just had the opportunity to speak with the MSTP students at one of their monthly seminars. And I think I was the first non-basic science person who had spoken to them. So they actually like all kind of woke up. So I would just encourage that, that might be a entry point into which they could think about ideas, because there are students in many different programs across the U that actually could connect with IHPI in meaningful ways.
Great, thank you. All right, I think we can move on. So the next part of the program is really looking ahead. It's the next phase of IHPI's development, and wanted to highlight that last summer, in spring, we went through a 5-year review. This was our second 5-year review. For those of you who may be new to IHPI, it was originally launched and approved by our Board of Regents for the university back in 2011. And our first 5-year funding cycle really ran from 2012 to 2017. And so our second 5-year cycle of university support followed that next period from 2017 to 2022. So as part of the plan to renew IHPI for its third cycle of funding, we underwent this external review that included colleagues from Duke and the University of Pennsylvania, as well as one of our department chairs in urology, Ganesh Palapatu, from the university here. And so they interviewed 14 stakeholders, as well as surveying 28 others about their experiences with IHPI, the value proposition, and submitted their 5-year report to Dr. Marshall Runge, Dean of the Med School and Executive Vice President of Medical Affairs. And it was overall, we were pleased, a very favorable review. They noted that the return on investment has exceeded expectations and that IHPI, in their view, had been transformative on campus. They also gave us some cautionary notes, encouraging us to think about inclusiveness, but not to the exclusion or precluding of focus. That as we grow our membership, we still have to keep focused on what our most important priorities and areas to add value are, with a clear sense of our mission and goals. And they encouraged us in some of their more specific recommendations to think about emphasizing policy training. We've taken that to heart with the Impact Accelerator program that we're holding next month that I mentioned earlier in the presentation. And they also encouraged us to expand our collaborations with other centers and institutes on campus, such as our new collaboration with the Rogel Cancer Center around policy sprints. So coming out of that report, last fall, Trish Meyer and I and the leadership team, with input from the National Advisory Board and the Early Career Faculty Advisory Council, have embarked on a strategic planning process. We're partnering with a local consulting firm that's worked with other organizations on campus, Bridgeport Consulting, to get input from various stakeholders across our community, both within and outside of the Institute. And this slide shows some of the key themes and priorities that have emerged from that effort. At the center, though, is our focus of today's session, which is on community and connection. So in gathering that input, we've asked members, what do you value most about the IHPI community? And really the theme that comes back over and over from members at different career levels, from different schools and colleges at the university, as well as the different campuses, the 3 campuses that we have. It's the spirit of community and collaboration, which some describe as a second home, in addition to their primary appointment in their home school or department. And on the right side of this slide shows some of the more specific comments that we heard from faculty members about what they value from the IHPI community. And so we want to continue to foster these ways of connecting and building community. So now I'd like to turn to Trish Meyer, our managing director, and introduce this next section of our program, which is focused on, in this hybrid world that we're living in, how can we build and cultivate IHPI's strong sense of community and collaboration? Trish.
Thanks, John. So I know there are probably people in this room who are activity adverse, but I promise this will be short and painless and hopefully fun. And we actually really, really need and value your input. So we are going to use all of the ideas, or at least review all of the ideas that are generated during the session. So you'll notice that you've got some markers and pens and paper and a big flip chart pad on the table, as well as some directions for the activity. So what we're going to do, I'll just quickly walk through it and then you can do it at the table. Hopefully there's sort of an even number of people at each table. But there's going to be a few different aspects of this activity. We're going to start with individual brainstorming. So if everybody just takes a piece of paper, when I say go, which I will do after I go through the directions, you'll have about 2 minutes to just individually write down ideas about what the Institute can do to help facilitate this goal and what you personally can do. So just try to generate maybe 3 to 5 ideas for each of those sections, and don't edit yourself, just write whatever comes to mind. After that, that'll be about 2 to 3 minutes to do that. Then we're gonna ask you to turn to somebody at your table and just kind of share your ideas with each other. And then between the two of you, you decide on the top 3 ideas of your pooled ideas for each question. I know the math is getting tricky here. Okay, and then after that, we're going to turn and everybody's going to share their ideas with the whole table. And then the table as a whole will again narrow it down to the top 3 ideas. But please actually, if you could write all of the ideas on the flip chart so that we've got them all recorded, and then just circle what the group decides as the top 3 ideas for each area. I think it sounds more complicated than it is. It should be okay. And then we'll see how much time we have, and we'll ask a few brave volunteer groups to report out. So I'm going to be your timekeeper. So if everybody can get your piece of paper ready for your individual session. Yeah, and if you need to move to another table in order to have a partner, go for it. All right, so why don't we go ahead and get started on your individual, or your individual brainstorming of these ideas for about 3 minutes. Yes, the question is up on the board. So how can we build upon and cultivate IHPI's strong sense of community and collaboration? What can the Institute do to facilitate this, and what can you personally do? Okay, everybody, it's time now to talk to your entire table and share your ideas. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. I hate to stop the table conversations, but in the interest of time, we're gonna need to wrap it up. So one point, after the posters have been created, our staff are going to actually put them up on those boards. So during the reception, you can look at other people's ideas. We've got markers and sticky notes. You can make comments or upvote. So you'll have a chance, since we won't have time for every table to report out, you'll still have a chance to see the ideas. So do I have any brave volunteer tables who want, oh, Sharia, right there, first hand up. Okay, who wants to?
So our group had a ton of ideas. It was very difficult to just select 3, but we decided that we should have a regularly scheduled IHPI work-in. So that could be weekly or maybe monthly.
Can you explain what define
absolutely,
work
I'm going to.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So a work-in would be a day during the week where everybody comes into the office here, and we know that there will be snacks that's provided. And we will bring our computers and work from here. And so that might be because there's so many of us, maybe we need to have an additional room, or maybe we just take up the space that we usually could be in that's here. So that's one thing. And if it's a time that we know, or a day that we know we want to do it, then people could plan if they're going to work on campus a particular day to head over this way and to rub elbows. The other were regularly scheduled social hours. These would be in the evening. They may or may not involve beverages, and of course snacks. And this would be perhaps coordinated with in-person events. So like, for example, if we know that today is the member forum, there would be a social hour following someplace where people could continue to engage socially for a bit. Or if there's a speaker or something like that. And then the final one was around students. And so starting some type of student postdoc networking and training, sort of mentoring groups, including undergrads. We don't often talk about undergrads. But having opportunities to gather students together to either become a part of different teams or to provide, some of the same training that we're able to get and get more people interested earlier in research and in policy.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. Yes. Oh, I see Susan's hand back there. Okay. Oh, here's a microphone. Oh, yes.
Thank you. I'm speaking for the Powerful Women's Table. We named ourselves, so you know. So for the Institute, we actually had 4, and for individuals 2. We believe in, community effort. So for the Institute, pilot funds, particularly for something like M.P.P, where you have to have multiple disciplines or people coming from multiple schools, but also potentially for targeted topics. And of course, community engaged research and health policy came up. I don't know why or how. We also suggested either a Ph.D., it's trying to help with getting a Ph.D. in health services research, or a concentration in health services research for other Ph.D. programs. Involving and including staff more, that lots of other centers and institutes have mentor programs for staff and other programs for staff. And by the way, we think supporting mentoring for students, faculty, and staff. So individual, show up, and bring grad students.
Thank you, Susan. One more table. Oh, Donnie over here. Oh, Jessica's coming behind you. And like I said, we'll be sharing all of the posters during the reception, so we'll have a chance to see all of the great ideas. But take it away, Donnie.
I'm Donnie Lakoski from Cardiac Surgery. I'm a health services researcher as well. So for IHPI, we said it'd be helpful, it sounds like thematically, to coordinate on-site days and times for groups based on themes and individuals. Social events are not a bad idea. There was a topic around pubs and alcohol that helps support creativity. And on the personal front, being present more often and volunteer to lead activities. And in terms of the citizenship theme, if you're not using your office space, fill in the blank. Share it for others, right? So we see empty offices that could be used for other people, so.
Thank you very much. And again, I would love to hear from every table. In the interest of time, we're going to move on, but thank you all. I hope these were interesting, productive conversations for you. And I promise we are going to review all of these flip charts. So thank you for your engagement. And I'm going to turn it back to John now. Thanks.
Thank you, Trish, and thank you, all of you, for your ideas, which we look forward to collecting, synthesizing, and then sharing back with you, and really acting on. Some of these are ones that have already come up, for example, engaging staff more in and creating career development opportunities for our staff in different domains. is an important way to help build the strength of our overall community. So we look forward to that. So this next section of the program is focusing on rethinking space to foster community. And that's another important element that we see in terms of moving forward in this hybrid world. Obviously, a number of the themes that we just heard about from the table discussions deal with how we use our space most effectively and bring our community together to engage in both structured and less structured interactions that are so much a part of IHPI going back to its founding. So this slide just shows some of the spaces that are available here at IHPI. Our new gourmet coffee. Thank you, Dana Brown, for making this happen up on the 4th floor, open to all IHPI members working on site. There's a popcorn machine up there as well as just creating some spaces within our overall plan for IHPI that are more inviting, like our the think tank that we have here on the ground floor down near the Clinician Scholars Suite, or what we now label as the Zen Den up on the 4th floor, those 2 comfy blue chairs. So we encourage you to help us think about this, and that's the focus of the next section of our program, which is around building community by design, learning from the experiences of the CHOP Workspace project. So for that, I want to invite Andrew Ibrahim and his team. Here's Andrew, up to lead us in this discussion.
I'll ask the rest of my panel to come on up too. So obviously we're in a very different place than we were the last time we had this many people in a room together, and that's pretty special. And we walked back into our CHOP offices probably about a year and a half or 2 years ago to a lot of empty cubicles. And it was just very clear that the space we had before was not the same space we needed going forward. And it turns out, as you'll hear in a minute, when you ask people what they want everything. And so we've tried to pilot that and figure it out. So you'll hear a little bit from Mary Burns and Alex Holloway, who are probably 2 of the people who are physically in our space the most, can tell you every hidden source of chocolate, every who comes in, who doesn't. So they know the space intimately, and we're going to rely on them to give us some candid feedback about this. But what I really want to do is hand things off to Mitch Mead. I think one of the things that makes Michigan special, and especially IHPI, is you end up getting these unicorn people, and Mitch is one of them. So he's a double major in architecture and health economics. So he can both draft floor plans and do hierarchical modeling. And I was just like, please tell me you want to go to med school. It turns out he wants to go to med school. So he's been working with me for the last 2 years. But when this space redesign plan came up, it turns out he has all the tools to start piloting that. So I'm going to hand things off to Mitch Mead, who's starting Michigan Med School later in the year. And he'll show you a little bit of the pilot stuff we've been trying to do. It is a work in progress, and nothing's in stone. Everything moves almost every week, and that's part of the spirit of this. But we'll have Mitch kind of share our process, and then we'd love to have a discussion with you guys about how we think about it going forward.
Thanks so much, Dr. Ibrahim, and thank you to everybody for having me. So as mentioned, we've been leading a pilot project to redesign our office space, and so I'll be discussing that today. For those of you who don't know CHOP, we're a Health Services Research Center. We have about 72 faculty, fellows, and staff, in addition to a variety of medical students and other University of Michigan members that join our space. And we're in the 2nd floor of the NCRC Building 16, the second half, and we're around 7,200 square feet of office space, which sounds daunting, but in reality, designing for it's quite fun. So during the pandemic, everybody went home and worked remotely. And so it left us with this question of, in a world where you can work from home, why come into the office? Why have a space where you can collaborate with peers? And so when we looked at our office space, we wanted to rethink, in a post-pandemic world, what does it mean to design a space for Health Services Research Institute, even more for our own community? And so when we started thinking about our pilot, we let this key question guide us of, how do we rethink our office and the space that we collaborate to better serve the needs of our community? So not only just to rethink about the spaces we use and how we use them, but how to better serve the needs and programming of our center. And so when we started to think about how to pursue this question, of course, we did a literature review or a research center. So we looked at how have spaces been designed for where people collaborate across time. So from the 1980s to the 2000s, you probably know the cubicle. It's across a lot of IHPI's buildings. It's a space that prioritizes the individual task work and it's relatively uniform. But through time, as we move more towards modern day period, we can see other office spaces that are prioritizing collaboration, the idea of multifunctionality to serve a community of people in a collaborative space. In addition, that spaces are starting to have an identity, and you can see this in a variety of other office spaces. And so this is what kind of left me a little unsettled, and why I was really excited to be a part of this pilot project is that when we looked at our own office space, we were in the 1980s. And so it really motivated us to think about what would a modern day office space for our center look like. And so we started looking at, and interesting enough, people across the industry really care about how people collaborate across workspaces because we spend a large amount of our time in the office around peers working. And so we looked at a variety of research published by architectural centers, environmental psychologists, and other industry experts to understand what does it mean to design a good workplace for our center and for communities. And so as you can kind of see from some of these images that have been termed great places to work, you can see there's a wide variety of the spaces they offered, from variations in furniture, the scale at which they designed for people, from both hybrid formats with screens everywhere. And especially one thing I want to point out is this idea of identity, that all of these spaces are incredibly distinct. And so this is just to iterate the point that as we design for a future office for our center, we wanted identity to be a part of this. And so in addition to that, we started to pull out all these features that we found across these great work environments for offices across the country that we wanted to inform our own design, from being collaborative to having it resourced and of course being caffeinated and stocked with food. But one key question we had when thinking about these other offices that were for tech industry firms, for other hospitals, was, would this work for us? And so as we started to go into this process, we let this guide our key question, that we needed to understand our community before we began designing. And so of course we sent out a survey. And one of the first things we found is that hybrid is here to stay. Around 90% of our center specifically would not be coming in 5 days a week. So we knew this was a key factor that we needed to adjust around. In addition, we found that around 90% of people wanted either to have a hybrid option always provided for meeting spaces or to be exclusively virtual. So this was a key indicator to us that we needed to think in a hybrid manner. In addition, as Dr. Ibrahim mentioned, when you think about and ask people what type of spaces would they like to work in, every potential permutation of space, from being the most open, collaborative, to the most private and individual, was requested. So again, this idea that we needed to think about neurodiversity in this term, the thought that you need variation in the spaces that can be used for different types of tasks and behaviors, that we need to provide this for our community. In addition, similarly, when we thought about how would you use the space and thinking about programming, people brought a variety of different priorities, from thinking about talking with peers, to learning, to doing individual work, to all the above. So again, to iterate that, we needed to create a space that was both hybrid, but also provided flexibility in how it could be used. And so with that, I'd like to introduce you to our previous floor plan before the pilot. In the blue squares, you can see these are all private areas, being private offices in addition to cubicles. And then you can see in the yellow, this was our collaborative spaces. So you can just see visually that proportionally, we did not have a lot of space for collaboration, as noted by the picture on the right as well. And so as we started to think about how could we iterate a pilot project, we started with a blank canvas. We just thought about all of these different examples we saw across other offices and information from our survey, from our community, to think about what could our office potentially look like. And so we started by thinking about the needs in different spaces to collaborate and think about potential of 5 to 6, 8 person table to communicate and work on a project as a team, to thinking about the need for individual space and that our community still wanted that, to thinking about including cubicles and private offices across that. In addition, we thought about improving our identity, our signature spaces across our office floor plan, and thinking about whiteboards or different forms of pictures, and especially the idea of coffee, to improve the attractability and amenities for our community. And then finally, a key need for our community was that we were maximizing our conference space, that small area for collaboration. So we knew we both need a larger space, but we thought, how could we play with that and have fun? So we imagined it as a large Thanksgiving table that we could all come together. And so with that, I'd like to update you all on where our redesign currently is to date, some of the things that we've done, in addition to some of the things we're continually improving on. So the first thing that we did is we removed these central computer stations that were within our office and just opened it up to provide a central gathering space for our center. And so this is showing it up on the left as an example of one of our mock case study trials that we had, showing the wide layout. We can fit 40 to 50 people in here. And one key thing I wanted to point out as well is that you'll notice everything is on wheels, which has been a huge part of our success for this pilot, that we can really adapt this space to the needs from the size of people that would like to congregate and use the space, in addition to the utility they would like to use it for. So with that, I just would like to show, these are just 4 of many examples that we've thought about and events that we've hosted within the central gathering space, from a lecture being hosted to a workshop to a smaller, you can see in the bottom right, a team using it for a conference hybrid meeting. So this is just to show the example that when we thought about neurodiversity, we really wanted to prioritize the ability of flexibility within our furniture. And so in addition to that, we removed 2 cubicles and introduced this idea of the pods. So the pod being this idea that we provide different forms of furniture that you might have seen in some of the previous office examples to adjust and provide differences in the ways people could communicate. So thinking about providing 2 couches versus just simply 2 high chairs by the window. And so this has provided different options for people to choose on how they want to collaborate, if they would like a more formal or informal gathering space for when they talk about their work. And then in addition, we've added signature features. I will never underestimate the power of caffeine and snacks for a community. So that's a powerful aspect of that. In addition to providing things like whiteboards where people can show their work as they work on a project to indicate to people the identity of our space. And so some of the things we're continually improving on as we have led this pilot, and there are new things that continually come up as we continue to change. The first is that there's a need for evolving space needs as people find they would like to host different events of different sizes of people and use different hybrid formats or different tools. We're continuing to rethink about how we'll use our space. In addition, a part of our central gathering space that we didn't think about originally is that now sound accessibility has become a key part. So, people in the back of the space struggling to hear the front. So again, this just being an idea to show that as we continue to think about improving the space we work in, there'll be points that continue to come up along the process to continue improving. And then finally, I wanted to make the point that in a post-pandemic world where people can work remotely and people get the choice to choose where they work, we've let this be our key idea for guiding our concept around office design, this idea that if you don't provide a space that people can collaborate in or find lively or find attractive, people will vote with their feet and they'll stay home. So this is a key factor as we continue to move forward, that we really want to show that our space is improving, becoming more attractable the more people spend time there. And so with that, I would like to say thank you, and I will pass it over to the panel.
Thank you so much, Mitch. I think this is what Mitch just showed you in 7 minutes was like 2.5 years of his life. So thank you for doing that very humbly. And it's definitely a work in progress. I will start the questions up here with our panelists, and then we'll pass things around to anyone else who has questions. And I'll start with Dr. Burns to my left, one of our faculty expert in qualitative work. When we started this project, because Dr. Burns is in her office all the time, what were you thinking during this evolution when you saw us empty cubicles and then it was just an empty rug space, and then we eventually put in a putt-putt course? What were your thoughts about CHOP leadership during that period?
I mean, well, no, I think thinking about how we were redesigning the space and inviting people into the space and making it open for everyone and welcoming is really important, at least to me, for 2 specific reasons, despite what I think of CHOP leadership and their putt-putt. No, I'm just kidding. One is I'm a team scientist, and I know there's not a lot of faculty that are team scientists in HSR. It's a little bit more popular in basic sciences, but it's my success is dependent upon being present, being members of teams, helping everyone and participating. It's much easier to do that when people are actually present and where I can engage with others in a meaningful way, where they don't feel like they're just bugging me with another Zoom meeting or worrying about those things. And with that, I've always had an open door policy. I come from a traditional academic, I'm a sociologist, so I taught undergraduates at a small college before coming to Michigan, and my door is always open. And when it's open, you're always, well, it's almost always open. And when it's open, you're welcome in. And that's where I think good conversations and good ideas and questions get answered. And it's really one of my core values. And it was very lonely and sad when there was no one just dropping by, asking questions or thinking about their research. And even if I'm wrong in helping them think about their research, we're still talking about it and moving the work forward. And so whatever it took, I was more proponent of donuts and snacks than putt-putt golf. But I love the putt-putt golf personally. But yeah, I think these are the things that actually helped people, like whatever it was that people needed to get back to the office at least one day a week, where we could all be together, I was going to vote for. And I also am hybrid, so I'm not there all the time, but I'm there a lot often. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Mary. And I want to ask Alex too. So Alex was hired, I think, midway through pandemic. So I'd never seen the CHOP pre-pandemic, which I think a lot of us knew and have nostalgia about still. Alex, you are probably at your desk almost every day. What is it in your do you think is valuable in your kind of peer group that brings you to an office and that keeps you from being on the couch at home, where I'm sure you'd be enormously productive, but you come in all the time. So what is it that draws you in, and how should we think about that going forward, and kind of how we recruit people and develop our center?
Yeah, of course. Certainly seeing your smiling face in the CHOP space is a big, no, I'm just kidding. I think it's, as a younger person, coming in and interfacing face-to-face with faculty and mentors is extremely valuable for me. I'm also the manager for Dana Tellum's lab, and that includes working with a lot of different people, from research assistants to statisticians and faculty. And I just find it a lot easier to get things done and interface in a dynamic way in person. And, like the hybrid virtual solutions are kind of the secondary, time sensitive, immediate kind of things. But I always prefer to be in person, and so I think that's why I come every day, so that it's kind of a standard, and so that I'm always here and available. So,
all right. Well, I guess we'll open things up to the audience for about 10 minutes. I'm happy to engage your feedback or thoughts or questions about our little pilot project, and I should say publicly very thankful to Dr. Ayanian and Trish for letting us do this pilot. And letting us try to experiment with a space that I think otherwise was just going to stay empty. And if it was still empty, at least we tried, and we're excited that at least we fill up a couple days a week.
Okay. Hi, Vahakan. That was great, by the way. Mitch, fantastic presentation. I had a question, in thinking, looking at some of the pictures, thinking about the open spaces. What about some of the challenges in terms of noise and two groups trying to hash things out separately? How do you envision kind of trying to maintain kind of a scenario where people can kind of work who need to concentrate and not kind of cross talking across groups?
I love it. I will. I'll take the initial response and I'll hand things off to Mitch. So Mitch and I spend a lot of time at the architecture studio in Taubman College, and it's fascinating. They have a room this big where there will be 10 different groups, all at small tables, and there are these cultural norms where everybody can speak at the same time, and there's no problem listening. So part of it is like demonstrating the normative culture. One thing that we've tried to do, and a majority of our faculty do it, is they leave their doors unlocked when they're not in their office. And so with my team, if any of them need to go on a Zoom call, have a one-on-one conversation, and it's Monday when I'm operating, they just use that door. And so we've tried to get more flexible about the closed door spaces. Let me hand things off to Mitch, because I think there's some other creative design solutions that we might be leaning into.
Yeah, I think there's kind of two ideas that I have in response to that question. I think the first is a large part, as mentioned, that in the architecture school, it's a cultural thing as well, that, you know, as a part of trying to lead this pilot and being a part of that I gave up my cubicle and in essence sat in one of the most open collaborative spaces. So of course I hear the sound. And so a part of the just institutional or kind of collaborative cultural rules that we try to put on is just headphones are, just leave me alone. That's just an individual thing that we've been trying to institute. I think the second thing is, in a perfect world, I would love to be in a space where, you know, at least in our center, it's very rare that there are multiple meetings happening in that space. That just still we're in a post-pandemic world where, given the option to work from home, people choose to. And so I think currently in our space as it is, we've had very few instances where two meetings were happening in that same central space. And as a product from that, opening up that gathering space, our other collaborative spaces of conference rooms have opened up as well. So there has been kind of a double effect of benefit to our community that even though we are still working towards getting to a point where hopefully we have the friction of too many meetings, that we're still not there. And once we do get there, we have more collaborative space as well that we can use.
I might just add that I kind of look at that as a boon, that there's multiple meetings going around in open spaces. I can't tell you how many times I've, you know, aired a question to which nobody knows the answer, and a statistician pops up and goes, I know that, and joins the meeting, and then you have a new perspective. So it's really beneficial in a way too.
So Mitch, first and foremost, you'll be a great anesthesiologist.
He's doing general
So come
surgery.
find me. Andrew's, you know, prepped you well, but come on over. So I think this is great. I'd be curious to hear about maybe any discrepancy in the perception between faculty and staff. And you have mainly faculty here today. And I think this presentation to staff would be really great in terms of demonstrating that this has been positive. Like a staff-led presentation to other staff in IHPI would be really positive in engaging people in this change, because I think many faculty are open to this sort of flexibility. Admittedly, we're not knocking down walls and removing the offices, but I think I'd love to hear staff perceptions.
Let's start with Alex on the staff side, and I think we have like a whole table of staff here too, but we'll start with Alex on that one.
Can I just get the question again, particular to the staff perspective?
A lot of our perspective, I think, is largely focused on kind of from a faculty lens. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, a number of our staff are largely remote, but they still want that 1 or 2 days a week where they can see the other analysts or the other coders and other project people. So there's no question that the needs are very different. Mm-hmm. Even amongst each of the individual groups. But Alex, are there things that you think might be specific to the staff, like the project managers, the research assistants, where the space may need to be thought about a little bit differently than just our big Thanksgiving table plus some faculty offices?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think among the staff there, I'm just thinking of my friends and their different opinions and attitudes about workspace. I think there's some people who really just won't ever come in, even if we built an amusement park here, you know. And I don't know what to do about those types. But for everybody else, I think it is the seeing each other and the access to faculty that really draws us in. And so anything that supports that, I think is really great. A lot of our dynamic meeting spaces really help with that.
Thanks. Great presentation. I appreciate all your work and effort that went into this. I have a question about technology. So when you've been using your new space for hybrid meetings, what have you learned? You know, because I think at different parts of NCRC and the IHPI space, we have different generations of technology. Some works better than others for hybrid meetings. And is there anything you've learned that we could bring back to the HITS team or others to help us, be more effective in the use of technology when we do want to have hybrid meetings in the space that we have?
So one thing we love about the spirit of IHPI is we were interested in using the OWL, which if you haven't used is this thing that looks like a cone that sits on your desk, but it's a 360 camera on the top. And it turns out the fourth floor had one. So we actually used that for a couple months before we bought it because it was pretty expensive. And that's actually been really great for hybrid, both in terms of video and sound. One challenge we're still kind of into is like the size of the screen. Getting a screen that's proportional to the size of the space that we created is pretty challenging. And so it's making us rethink either a new screen or a new space. But one of the trade-offs we're struggling with is if you do mount this big projector, big wall thing, it takes away some of the flexibility of the space. So currently we have a TV on wheels and it's probably just not big enough. So we're still trying to negotiate the flexibility of biggest screen possible that's also movable. So I'm not sure exactly where that lands on IT, but I suspect if we move into more of these flexible layouts, being able to do that almost readily. We change our configuration 15 minutes before the meeting starts, which is kind of like a fun task for us. But making that a little more user-friendly would probably be high on the list.
Andrew, thank you. I mean, you thanked John and I, but actually we also need to thank Michigan Medicine Facilities. Cicely Luca was an incredible partner, and Marissa Watson, and they were open to this pilot. This was probably over, 18 months ago or something that we started talking about it, and CHOP agreed to kind of take it on, but they were incredibly supportive. And so, you know, we're hoping by sharing your experiences, if there's other groups who are interested in trying something, that we could potentially work with you as well. So, but Michigan Medicine Facilities was a really terrific partner in this. So just wanted to acknowledge them as well. So.
And I'll say just as a last plug, 'cause I think we're out of time. If you think you and your space want to do something like this, by all means, please just come use it. We have a number of research groups at IHPI who just say, hey, Tuesday morning, can we come use that middle space? And they try it and decide like, oh, this is great. We're going to book again next month, or maybe not at what they thought it was going to be. So come hang out in the cubes, come hang out in the Thanksgiving table, come take some coffee. It's on Dr. Dimmick's tab. And we'd love to have you and frankly get feedback on what works or doesn't. But ideally, it's a test ground for everyone else in IHPI to try space before they spend a lot of time and energy redesigning their own. Oh, yeah.
Thanks so much for this presentation. It was really interesting. My question has to do with sort of the impact of getting to the office, because it doesn't matter how attractive the office is when people have sort of different commutes, different expenses, and obviously that influences whether or not people are coming, no matter what the end space looks like. And obviously commute is related to socioeconomic status. And so I was wondering, is there any way to take that into consideration when building the office space, how burdensome it is for different individuals to make it there?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that for me as a commuter, who's not in a lower socioeconomic status, however, that I don't ever, the way our culture works, I don't feel obliged to come in ever, and I don't have to come in. And our culture is not set up for either of those things to happen. So if there is even like it's going to snow a tiny little bit, I'm not coming into work that day, and you can find me at home because it's just not worth it anymore. And we don't have to live like that where I'm driving for 3 hours in a blizzard. And so I don't feel like our culture demands that. And I feel like we have ways to connect and to do that. So if there is a situation with a staff member or anyone where they couldn't connect in, and I don't think I'm answering your question, it's still possible to be a part of CHOP and Engage since we have a hybrid scenario without the expectation. Would we love it if you came in once a week? Of course. But not at all necessary, and we certainly have plenty of staff that don't come in. And some faculty, too.
Yeah, I love the question. I think part of it speaks to what's the right balance. We prioritize a lot of our community programming on one day. So if there's one day you can make it, it's Friday, and that's like our day. And then the other days are almost like a bonus, and maybe finding the right balance. I don't think any of us have gotten to we want everyone here 5 days. Maybe it's 2, maybe it's 3, maybe it's 1. And I love your comment, Kate, about some of the thoughtfulness about who that includes or excludes as a boundary. So work in progress. So thank you. All right, thanks. Thanks, team.
So thank you, Andrew, Mitch, Mary, and Alex. That was, I think, a very stimulating presentation, and hopefully we come away with ideas for new ways to use space. So I did want to highlight on your tables, we have these table tents that cover many of the topics we've been discussing today, and particularly a QR code. For those of you who may be newer to IHPI, there's a lot more information on the benefits of membership and some of the programs we've been discussing today on that QR code. So we want to wrap up today's session with a very happy part of our member forum, which is our Policy Impact Awards. I want to invite Paula Lance and Renu Tipernini to join me up here. They are the faculty co-leads for our policy engagement efforts here at IHPI. And I want to thank Renu, who will be wrapping up her term in this role, and also thank Paula, who's continuing on as faculty lead for policy engagement. And they will introduce our Policy Impact Award winners this year. Yes. Okay. There we go.
Hi. Nice to see you all today. It's our pleasure, where are you? It's our pleasure to be announcing this year's IHPI Policy Impact Award winners. Since 2014, IHPI has recognized outstanding faculty members whose work has had a substantial impact on health policy or practice at the local, state, national, or even international level. This annual award recognizes high-quality research that's been translated to address pressing problems and policy debates related to healthcare, public health, population health, and beyond publishing in academic journals, which we know is important and coin of the realm for faculty members. This award acknowledges and celebrates people who actively engage with policymakers and key policy stakeholders to have that research translation and impact. While there are definitely many worthy recipients of this award among IHPI members, it's my privilege to announce the first winner of this award for this year, Dr. Sue Ann Bell. Sue Ann is a professor in the School of Nursing and a nurse scientist, nationally recognized scholar in the field of disaster preparedness and response. Today, she's being honored for her work to improve disaster preparedness and response that's focused on the health of older people and people with disabilities. Her work includes research, but also leadership and advisory roles at the federal level, and also her dedicated on-the-ground, boots-on emergency response work in service of many communities in need over the past many years. Dr. Bell has successfully communicated the policy and practice implications of her research findings and her firsthand experience on the ground to policy and lay audiences through policy briefs, op-eds, and other translation venues. In November of 2021, she testified in front of the U.S. Senate Special Committee on Aging during a hearing related to inclusive disaster management. In addition, Dr. Bell has had influential leadership roles at the federal level. She has served or is currently serving on numerous advisory councils and committees, including FEMA's National Advisory Council, the National Advisory Council for Seniors and Disasters, and several National Academy of Medicine committees. Her efforts have resulted in increased awareness of the importance of broad considerations of health equity and disaster preparedness, new policy design, and key recommendations for policy agencies. Dr. Bell's efforts have already strengthened public health disaster preparedness and response, and we look forward to her continued impact in the years to come. Congratulations, Dr. Sue Ann Bell. For you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. I just have a few words to say. Science is a team sport, and there are so many people that have been integral to the work that I do on a daily basis, or who have had an open door policy for me, and I am so grateful. I wanted to give a few shout outs from IHPI mentors like Chris Fries for nominating me for committees and providing letters of support, to Phyllis Wright Slaughter for her endless patience in helping me navigate data use agreements, to Eileen Kostanecki for the Inside the Beltway advice, and to peers and friends like Tony Coe for being a daily sounding board. As we've already heard from many people today, IHPI has been a research home away from home for me. It's provided me resources and mentorship and the opportunity to learn so much along the way. And relevant to today, that important learning has been about how to convert early ideas into meaningful change. In fact, my very first day as an NCSP scholar, I described how I'd been discouraging from studying disasters as a main focus. I'd been told it was unfundable and to find a new focus area. The immediate response I got was something along the lines of, how can we help, and we will be there with you to figure it out. And that has been completely true. As you've already heard, my work focuses on improving healthcare quality and access for older adults who've experienced disasters. There's a saying among disaster responders that if you've responded to one disaster, then you've responded to one disaster. So we have so much more to learn every time there is a disaster, and there's so much more work to be done to build systems of disaster response that are equitable and just. Thank you so much.
It is my honor with Paula and the rest of the policy engagement team to present this next Policy Impact Award to Dr. Karandeep Singh, an assistant professor of learning health sciences at the medical school who's doing work on an important and emerging area in our field. Dr. Singh is being honored for his efforts to fundamentally change the way we develop, deploy, evaluate, and ultimately use clinical prediction models on the national level. His research has uncovered problems with the performance of proprietary prediction models, highlighting inadequate transparency from vendors, a lack of consideration of clinical context, and a lack of oversight. Beyond raising these issues through his research and academic publications, Dr. Singh has engaged directly with the commercial sector to help address the problem through better reporting practices and updated regulations. And I want to highlight this because there's so much incredible work being done in many sectors, including the public sector, and I'll highlight a few examples of Dr. Singh's engagement, including in the commercial sector. Specifically, he worked tirelessly with Epic, the largest national electronic health records vendor, to raise concerns about their sepsis model, used by more than half of US hospitals after his work uncovered that its performance varies depending on the hospital in which it is being used. Epic subsequently overhauled their model following many of his recommendations. He also engaged with Google Health as they were developing policies related to the use of artificial intelligence in healthcare, served on an international consensus panel that developed artificial intelligence reporting guidelines, and co-led an American Society of Nephrology task force related to augmented intelligence. His efforts have changed policy around proprietary prediction models. For example, his work informed FDA guidance on artificial intelligence regulation and oversight and was cited by the White House Office of Science and Technology in a blueprint for an artificial intelligence Bill of Rights. Dr. Singh is committed to working in the best interests of the public and patients, partnering with the commercial sector, federal agencies, and other stakeholders to translate his research findings into real-world change. Please join me in congratulating him.
To Renu and to my IHPI colleagues, I'm really grateful for this recognition. As a junior faculty member, it can be really hard to see and appreciate how the connections are there between our research and health policy. And even once we see those connections, even more difficult to communicate our work to a health policy audience and the broader public in a way that produces positive change. Over the past few years, I've been really lucky to have had a front row seat to so many of my IHPI colleagues effectively using their research to inform policy, and probably more importantly, using policy to inform their research. A special thank you goes out to Brahmajin Alamathu, Akbar Walji, and to my chair, Chuck Friedman, for helping me see these connections more clearly in my own work. The policy issue my work has focused on is understanding how algorithms are used in healthcare, whether they work, and why they fail when they do. So I want to just share a few thoughts on algorithmic transparency, which I think is the lowest of lowest hanging fruits in this space, and yet we're still not doing it right. So we're at a real turning point where we're starting to see these technologies used and adopted, and because technologies like machine learning can be used to identify high-risk patients, they're rapidly becoming the go-to tools that our health systems are using to identify high-risk patients like sepsis. And a decade ago, we basically couldn't even implement these tools. We didn't even have the ways to do that. And now we've got dozens of companies knocking on our doors, telling us they've got these integrated tools that we can use right now today. Go ahead and implement it. But with rare exceptions, the science that led to the development of these tools and to their evaluation sits behind a veil of confidentiality. And even a description about what goes into these models is often considered confidential and not in the public domain. So really, let's think about it. Can we really not tell our patients what information goes into a model that makes decisions about their care or supports these decisions? In 2020, colleagues at UCSF found that there was a model that used religion. That's another proprietary model that's still being used today. It's still like 70 health centers that uses religion, uses ethnicity, uses personal finances to decide whether a patient's going to show up to clinic. Had this information been in the public domain, it would have been spotted right away. The fact that it's behind a login that only certain people can get to, I think is causing major harm. What about clinicians? Shouldn't we know what goes into models? So we looked at this proprietary sepsis model and found that it does really well in predicting sepsis after the fact, but just not before. And it wasn't until much, much, much later that we figured out that antibiotics are a predictor in this model. We had no idea, and I've reviewed all the confidential model cards that are there. It turns out it's sitting in an Excel file that only one of our analysts could get to that I don't even have the permissions to see today. So I think had we known that antibiotics were in the model, we probably wouldn't have written this paper. And I think that just goes to show you that a lot of the issues in this space really stem from a lack of transparency and a lack of accountability to the public. So while we as researchers debate the merits of different AI explainability techniques and fancy things, companies aren't even disclosing what variables or data their algorithms are trained on. And so I just wanted to highlight one thing, which is tomorrow, the Office of the National Coordinator for Health IT is set to release a proposed rule on algorithmic transparency, which if it's strengthened a little bit more, stands to make some real progress on transparency for companies that are distributing proprietary models. So I urge you to take a look at it. And broadly, I think IHPI, a lot of the work isn't focused on AI here, but I urge you to consider the policy implications of implementing in AI in health. Thank you.
So congratulations once again to Sue-Ann and Karandeep, and thank you to Paula and Renu for overseeing the Impact Award selection process along with Eileen Kostanecki and our policy engagement team. So this concludes the formal part of our program. We really thank you for joining us today. We really could feel the energy in the room, and we look forward to taking the ideas that you developed at your tables and coming back to you with some specific ways that both you and the Institute can support the collaborative efforts that we all are interested in promoting. We now are able to shift to our reception. I hope many of you can stay. We're here till 5 o'clock, and a good way to reconnect. And thanks once again. And thank you to our whole staff, Trish Meyer, and all the IHPI staff members. And particularly Stacy Trosell, who's in the back. Stacy, please wave, our event specialist. And all the other staff colleagues who helped to support today's effort. So really appreciate your participation. And as always, go blue. Thanks.